is. Thank you so much for coming, everybody. Give me I need a vibe check. Who's keen to see Darren? So I come here to introduce him, and I know that this is a crowd of people who, if I say a smidge of something wrong, I'm probably going to get corrected. So I don't need to sell the man's story to you tonight, but what I will say is that we are about to be in the company of, in my opinion, one of Australian music's still most underrated songwriters. He is one of the most natural storytellers I think I have ever heard as a music fan, but now have had the privilege to see evolve so beautifully in recent years. And I think as lovers of music, as lovers of performance, and as lovers of people living in their own truth, Darren Hayes' story, as we've been seeing in recent years, it's only just beginning. We can agree on that, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to get into things tonight. I'm glad that you've all got the copies of your book, of his book, Unlovable. Give me a cheer if who's already deep into this? Good. Okay, so we're gonna find out some more, but please make him feel welcome. Darren Hayes.
Isn't she fabulous? Yeah. Well, you all got the memo because you look fabulous as well.
Gorgeous.
Yes.
Gorgeous. Well, first of all, congratulations, my love. This book is, as a reader, it tore me apart in so many ways. So I can only congratulate you, but also thank you for being so open and for taking yourself to places. I can only imagine. You didn't know you were going to go?
Thank you. No, I didn't. I don't know if many of you know how the publishing deal came about.
Tell.
Yeah. So I don't obviously consider myself a celebrity, and the reason for that is if none of you are in this room, when I walk out the door, if I walk down the street, no one stops me ever. So there you go. I'm not a famous person. I'm somebody who has had an extraordinary life and the privilege of having maybe a Googleable career. And I'm so lucky that whenever I put out the bat signal, which is that I'm touring or I have a record out, so many of you show up for me, which means the world to me. So it's this wonderful duality that I have, where I've been able to craft a public life where most of the time I'm just sitting around in my pajamas, and then when I make a record or do something, you show up and you make me feel very, very loved. And the last time I did that was in 2023, and that's where we met, I believe. I made an album, the first time I ever wrote, recorded, produced, engineered everything on an album called Homosexual, because I am indeed a raging homosexual. And that album, for so many reasons in my life, I thought that I had retired from music for a long time. I don't need to go into why. If you read the book, you'll get a sense of it. But I had become very small, and so small that I was almost about to take probably one of the most extraordinary gifts that the universe had ever given me. I was about to take that away forever in order maybe to save my marriage. I didn't think I was ever going to make music again. And that album was such a lifeline for me. And I started to feel like I was coming back to life from black and white into colour. And I did a lot of press that was very honest. And one of those pieces of press was in the UK, and it was a picture of me as a 10-year-old boy sitting on my bed at Lake Road. My sister Tracy took a picture of me, and there was a picture of Michael Jackson on the wall. Some of you may have seen this picture. And I was such a good little boy. And this article asked me to explain the story of the picture. And the true story of the picture was that on the other side of the camera, my life was a horror story. I grew up in a family with a father who was a violent alcoholic, who beat my mother up on their wedding night. And in writing that article, Penguin reached out and said, would you be interested in writing that story about how you survived that? And that was the impetus for us being here today and writing this book.
I don't think even I knew that. But it opens up an interesting point that this stemmed from one story as opposed to having a label come to you and be like, hey, it's memoir time. You know what I mean? Like, and when we read this story, the fact that it starts with such a visceral memory and then it fleshes out so beautifully. Can you tell me a little bit about what that internal process was like? Because I know in the book you talk quite candidly about your first forays into therapy as well, and how obviously that is a journey. So when it comes to then essentially having to re-traumatize yourself in putting it into a form that is then going to be with the public, what does that do to your internal chemistry the first time?
Well, it's great that you talked about trauma. So I'm 52. I know I don't look it. I'm totally
rubbing it in.
But I was 25 the first time I went to a therapist. And it's because my assistant at the time was really worried that I was going to commit suicide. I was, at the peak of our sort of pop star powers at that point. And all of you made me feel fantastic. So when I was making music and I was on stage, and all of the attention and the validation, and when I say validation, I don't just mean from you, it was the outpouring of love of me to you that made me feel great. I loved being able to do that. I had all of this love to give, and there were thousands of people to give that to every night. But in those 2 hours, it wasn't enough to fill what Salman Rushdie and Bono often steals this quote. It wasn't enough to fill this God-shaped hole in me. And that hole in me was really just a simple statement, which was, my daddy doesn't love me. And it's crazy because when I grew up, I'm told when I was maybe 8 months old that I adored him. I don't ever remember liking him. I don't ever remember a kind word he said about me, a loving thing he did to me, or anything. I only remember being terrified of him and afraid of him. But I was absolutely traumatized by watching him. In writing this book, my big sister Tracy and my mom helped me fill in a lot of gaps that were pre-verbal.
Sure.
So, I'll give you an example. Sometimes I would be in therapy because my therapist thought I was going to kill myself. She thought I was going to kill myself because I was sleeping my days away. When I wasn't with all of you, I would just want to die. I didn't think anyone would notice, but she did. And this therapist sat down with me and he asked me about my family history, and I was like, okay, well, I kind of had a rough childhood, but, and he said, what do you mean by rough? And I said, well, my dad hit my mum, and there was that. And he said, okay, and is there any history of depression or suicide in your family? And I said, yeah, my grandmother killed herself, and my mother suffered from depression, and I think all my aunts on her side and uncles suffered from depression. But why are you asking me these questions? I was so angry. I just written the lyrics to Affirmation, where I said, I believe my parents did the best job they knew how to do.
Yeah.
And he said to me, can I ask you just a little question? Did you ever feel safe as a child? And like now I just broke. I was a millionaire. I was a pop star. I had smash hits. I just paid off my parents' mortgage. I was wearing John Paul Gaultier outfits for free. Thank you. But that question, it made me so angry. Because I still didn't feel safe. I never felt safe as a child. I was constantly looking out for threat. It's called threat detection.
Yeah.
My big sister and I were always in charge of making sure that my mother didn't die. And so I was put on some life-saving medication around the time of Affirmation. And I just kind of got on with my life. And now I'm going to do what we call in film a jump cut. So life goes on, I've had lots of medication. Yes, some of those suicidal thoughts have come back and forth, but I managed to stay here on the planet. But I'm writing this book, and every second day I get out of bed and I just feel so sad and so depressed, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
And it's because there are so many moments in my childhood and so many moments from high school when I was bullied and traumatized that I didn't process them. I couldn't process them. So they were just packed away in a way that great.
I need to say all of that again.
You're making me cry again? But they were packed away in the way I describe it as a zip file. Okay? So I know lots of people relate to PTSD or trauma, and I don't want to belittle anyone who has experienced anything worse than I have, but I know survivors of sexual abuse or any kind of violence. It's very common that what you're witnessing, what you're experiencing is just so intense and so horrifying that our brain is so brilliantly designed. The brain just says, no, can't process this, won't process this, won't let you feel this, I'm going to make you survive. It's our cave brain. It's all frontal lobe, I believe. And so it doesn't get processed as a normal memory, it just gets locked away like a landmine. And I have so many of those, or had, thankfully, but they were all just lined up in my brain, and every day that I would write, a memory would come near it, and that's what we call a trigger, and I wouldn't understand why I was depressed. And to answer your question, they won't all be as long, but it forced me back into therapy, where I had to have EMDR therapy, which is memory reprocessing, to unpack some of these things, some of which I didn't even remember, some of which I witnessed when I was 3 years of age. I couldn't remember some of the things that I'd seen. My sister had to tell me what had happened. They're so horrific, I couldn't print them in this book. But that's how hard it was to write the book,
I think, so I work with musicians daily of all different types, from all different walks of life, and when I talk to them about their process, it's always so baffling to me that your art form requires so much of you to create something that you ultimately love, and then you produce, and then you ultimately give it away. Like the amount of emotional labour that is required of songwriters to create narratives, to pull from their own memories is one thing, and then to go through what you've been through as a musician, but then also outside of that, to then repurpose all that again. When I first read this book, I was just like, God damn, Darren. But to see how, to see how complete you look and carry yourself, there is an air of peace and fulfillment that I remember seeing on you the first time we met, but seeing that even more now. Is it easier for you to be okay with being at peace, given everything?
Yes, and it's not because I needed to write this stuff to confess to anyone or anything like that. As I said in the beginning, I never thought I'd write a memoir. I'm not a celebrity, I'm not interested in telling gossipy tales. The backstory in this book is that I just happen to have this really exciting job. So all of these things were happening, and all of these ghosts were haunting me, and these stumbling blocks were coming up in the way. And it was so frustrating because I just wanted to be a pop star. The truth is, I became a pop star. I just got a message. I became a pop star to avoid dealing with any of that stuff. I'm going to quote a U2 lyric, but Bono has this song where he says, in my dreams I was drowning my sorrows, but my sorrows they learned to swim. And you can run and you can hide from pain, but eventually you have to deal with it or it will control your life. And for me, I think I didn't know that the added bonus of writing this book was that I would be forced back into therapy. I would have to make peace with some of this trauma. And what's so beautiful about it, one of the forms of therapy I had was called EMDR. My version of that is basically called memory reprocessing. Has anyone heard of like tapping?
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's basically rewiring the neural pathways of the brain, where you take a memory, and it's actually quite beautiful, and I relate to it because I see life cinematically and visually, and a lot of my dissociation as a child was, this isn't really happening to me, this is a movie, my father's not really hitting my mother, this is a musical, this is a music video. There's a scene in the book where I talk about going to see Michael Jackson in concert, which was a transformative moment for me, made me want to become a pop star. But I was also being kicked and slapped and hit by these two girls in the audience who were calling me a faggot. Yeah, because I was saying, I love you, Michael. He's like, oh, I love you. You know, I'm in the front row of this audience. And so I had learned throughout my life, at school, in front of my father, at a Michael Jackson concert or whatever, when anything horrible was happening to me, I could leave my body. And it wasn't happening to Darren, it was just happening to this meat skin. But being able to let the nervous system do what it needed to do, which in some instances was just cry. Sometimes it was just our body or our brain feels that if we react to this terrifying thing, because our cave brain thinks that we're actually in danger, so we can't differentiate between a train heading toward us and, say, the dread of a school bully. Both of those experiences feel like a life-threatening experience, and so the body treats it the same way. So I got to go back and, in some instances, say, no, you can't treat me like that. Give a voice to the little boy that could never say no, or to have grief or to cry about things that had happened to me and have sympathy for myself. And in some instances it was just so simple. It was like, it was just 3 minutes of crying and then that's it?
Yeah.
That's it? Oh, that was easy.
Yeah.
I carried that around for 30 years and all I had to do was just cry.
Just cry, babe.
Yeah.
It's like a pressure, you know, turning that tap, letting it go, and then
the brain is able to take that memory and resequence it, almost like a strand of DNA. It just says, oh, thank you.
yeah.
And then it's still something bad that happened to me, but I can look back on it and think, yeah, that was just a shitty thing that happened to me. As opposed to it being this landmine that I'd spent all my life just trying not to step on because I thought it would kill me.
Yeah. You should write another book. No. I will say, when I got to the end of the book, you leave it on a really good note. I was just like, okay, I do want to just talk about the way that, I mean, for somebody who never had a plan to write something like this, the way that you use language to convey intimacy, to convey nuance, and I know you're a songwriter, so obviously, but there is something different about writing lyrics and then writing your life story. Two separate things, so the fact that you can do both extremely well, I want to tone it down, it's too much talent, but I found myself reading just the way you describe your surroundings of being in this particular part of Queensland, which I discovered I also spent a lot of time growing up in. My dad lives in Logan. I spent a lot of my formative years in and around Woodridge. So yes, thank you. But I do want to just touch on Woodies.
Yes!
I remember Gary.
Oh my God. Okay,
so when I got to that, I was just like, I know exactly who you're talking about, and I remember the sense of warmth and the sense of just instant comfort as a customer. Going to a CD shop back then, it was like going to a candy land, you know what I mean? And I remember being maybe 10 or 11, parents going through a divorce, wonderful time in life. But going in and picking up, I think it was Meteor by Lincoln Park, and I was going through like my rage phase because I didn't understand what was happening to my parents at that time. And that's a visceral memory for me because I remember being like, music is offering me a space to just escape to. And so whenever I would go back to visit my dad, I'd be like, you need to take me to Woodies, take me to the plaza, I want to go to Woodies, pick up me CDs. I love that shop, that man, everything that it came to represent as you became the pop star that you wanted to be. that sense of home remained. Can you tell me about what it was like to revisit those memories? Because I don't feel like that's ever gone away for you.
No, in fact, well, my co-worker Claire is in the audience somewhere or backstage. Woody, listen, the coolest thing ever happened to me at the worst time of my life. So when I was being bullied at school, I had just graduated from the full elite program of domestic violence. My father decided to stop drinking just as I got into teenagehood, which was just ace. So all of my childhood, squished, stomped upon. My poor sister, it was virtually her, until she was, 18. She didn't have a childhood. She was my second mother. Similarly for my brother, but for me, I graduated from life at home is hell and you can never tell anybody because it's so embarrassing. And if anyone finds out about us, my father would chase them out of town or chase them out of our lives forever. And then I finally get to high school, and who do I become? The faggot, the kid that gets bullied, gets beaten up. Life is hell. Spent most of my lessons with my head, in my arms. Teachers not protecting me, whatever. But then I do work experience at Woody's music school. And I become the coolest fucking kid on the campus. And Gary becomes a surrogate father to me. He's everything that I wish my father was. He's warm, he's emotional, he cries at a sad song. And he's not gay. I know this because he's always checking out women that walk in the room. And I find that confusing because I'm just like, I guess. He adored his wife, Carly. I'm talking about him in the past tense because he passed away recently. And it was devastating to me. But he adored me and it was mutual. And he gave me all of this validation. He saw all the qualities in me that my mother saw in me. He thought I was such a good man. A young man, but a good man. He taught me values. He taught me customer service. He taught me how to be kind to people. He taught me how to sell 6 volumes of the Rock Box, which was a 6-cassette anthology of rock and roll music, just by going, watch this. And he would just put it on, and he would have a competition. He'd be like, watch him come in. And he would just play this music I hated. But he was just the ultimate role model, and he had always wanted to be a singer. He gave me a reel-to-reel tape machine. I think I played in one of my first ever songs, and all the time behind that counter, I was dreaming up one day I'm going to do this, one day I'm going to be on the other side of the music industry. Yeah, he was just everything to me.
Again, just memories as a kid going in and just having him remember me, even though it would be months that would go by.
He meant it.
Totally.
And that's how I feel about fans, you know. You can't fake that.
No, at all.
You can't fake that. You have to have a relationship with your audience, and part of it was telling the truth. Sometimes someone would come in and they would say, what's this album like? And I would go, oh shit. Honestly, do you want to listen to it? That would be because I couldn't sell someone an album that wasn't very good. And they would listen to it, and they would be like, I don't really like it. And I'd be like, oh my god, thank God, I don't really like it. I just wanted you to listen to it. But just being honest to a customer built up this trust, and so that then when you would say, listen, you have to listen to Watermark by Ennio. It's very relaxing. This is a deep cut, old school reference. Trust me.
You've got your homework for tonight. You've got your homework.
They trusted me.
Well, speaking of the trust and just the way that your relationship with your fans has been nurtured over the years, both in Savage Garden and outside in your solo career, again, you can't fake it. And that's legacy, baby. That's knowing what you're leaving behind, even if it might not be a conscious thing. And I remember when the lead up to the homosexual record was happening, I remember how stressful that press run was. And I remembered thinking, the fans have got you, but I can imagine how hard it would be to return to Australia with an album that was so defiant, so vibrant, and yet so just like sexy. So sexy, but in a way that we hadn't really experienced from you before.
Yeah.
I don't want to speak out of turn, and this is why I'm asking you now, like from an outsider's perspective, did it feel like you were coming out again for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, I now realise I didn't really come out.
Sure, yeah.
Until I released that album.
Yeah.
Even when I got married, talk about subtext. I didn't say I was gay, I said I married my boyfriend. Can someone page Freud and talk about internalized homophobia? I married my boyfriend. I was hiding behind this stance that I thought was very rebellious, which was like, don't put me in a box. You know, I don't want you to put gay first, because I had been behind the scenes really punished for being gay by the record company.
Yeah.
I think a lot of you know this story now, but you know, when I released Spin, I made a music video for Insatiable, and these homophobes in, it has to be said, really unflattering suits. This is a flattering suit. It's not hard. They wore the kind of suits that a gentleman whose name rhymes with bottled grump would wear. They just look like sacks of potatoes. And the entire time I was in Savage Garden wearing nail polish and John Paul Gaultier's like skin-tight mesh, you know, I was got a body for it back then too. The amount of Spanx going around here. Does anyone actually make male Spanx?
That's the male line.
I need to get hooked up.
Yeah,
No, there is a thing called middle-aged spread, and it's not this. Anywho, the point was, when I was in the band and I was ambiguous and androgynous, and I stood next to Adonis, Daniel Jones, blonde, skinny, naturally skinny, ate whatever he wanted. You know, I felt like an ogre. I felt like Shrek. It was just like whatever, but had nail polish. I was just androgynous, and all of my sexuality came out through my fashion, and it was fine for them because that was hip and that was cool and that was okay. The minute I became a solo artist, they were like, what if people find out he's gay? And I dared to dance in that music video, and you know what, damn it, I looked good. They were so threatened by it. It cost $1 million. They put it on my tab. They made me repay that. They made me reshoot the music video. They put out an internal memo that said, cancel all TV appearances with this guy because if people see him move, it's all over. Like, what that did to my self-esteem was horrific. I don't know if you know, but I'm a singer. I had just done a duet with Pavarotti. And they launched my career in the United States. Will you clap for that?
Yeah.
They launched my career in the United States with one meet and greet in a room, shaking people's hands. They wouldn't even let me sing. So yes, by the time I made homosexual, that's why I looked like a flamingo on steroids.
Okay, I just need to take it back because the visuals for that record, the hair giving, the colour palette, amazing.
Everything was me, and
everything
everything was me.
Yeah, there was no part of that record.
There was no stylist, there was no art director, there was nothing. Oh, there was a packaging person, Amy, who did the first ever Savage Garden cover, but all she did was the font.
Sure.
That was it.
But that kind of leads into what I wanted to touch on, is that with that record, not only did it serve as a beautiful reintroduction moment, maybe, but it also showed that Darren Hayes is uncompromising. There was nothing about that record that felt like it was pandering to a musical trend. It was bending to the whim of any sort of industry pressure that you and I both know never goes away.
No.
The fact that this was the record that brought you back to radars in such a big way, I was just like, go the fuck off. Yeah, clap for that,
I have to say, and thank you for everyone that did support that record. I did receive some homophobia, and you would be surprised from where it came from. A lot of it did come from women, and none of you here. But it was repulsive.
Yeah.
It came from women that just went, oh, look, we get it, you're gay, but why do you have to make it all about you being gay? Go and look at my YouTube and look at the music videos I made for that record, and look at some of the disgusting comments underneath those videos where I dared to kiss a man. And now these are the same women that were fine when I was in a music video with Kirsten Dunst or in a heterosexual role. But me, as an out gay man for then 15 years, it was like, why do you have to rub this in our face? And you think about that statement, literally everything in the modern world is made for heterosexual people. Is The Notebook rubbing heterosexuality in your face? That's a damn good kiss. But I make a music video where I happen to kiss the brother of Captain America. Very difficult.
So I want to know more about that.
But some of the criticism I received was really talk about like, wow, let's slice that onion. And you know what I did about all that? Fuck off, block, 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 block. Don't need you. If the idea of me being gay is uncomfortable for you, fuck off. Don't care.
Not needed. Not needed.
Don't need you.
At all. At all. That's a whole other panel topic. I spent literally hours talking about, but I do feel like that is the unfortunate downside, and I was talking about this earlier.
Because people don't want gay men to, you don't want to imagine gay men having sex, is what the problem is. Gay men are allowed to be clowns, we're allowed to be your uncle, we're allowed to be harmless, we're allowed
to be the emotional punching bag, they're allowed to be the person who is there, but God forbid they fucking exist.
Yeah.
Proudly, you know what I'm saying? Like, God forbid, it disrupts the fantasy.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy. Before we do get out of here, I'm conscious of time, but I wanted to just spend a quick moment loving on your beautiful mother.
Yes.
Because I was getting really close, but I can feel it coming. But as much as this book is about you and your journey, I feel like even maybe subconsciously this book is about her strength.
Totally. It's a love letter to my mom.
It's a love letter, right? I feel like I mean, I'm not a parent, but that bond between mother and child is, at whatever age, it's something that can't be replicated. And I feel in this book the way that you've balanced intimacy, sensitivity, and just pure vulnerability in recounting some really visceral moments as a child, but detailing the emotional journey between you and your mother is just so admirable. And I just wanted to touch on just this powerhouse of a woman real quick. Like, now that this is documented here, tell me just like how proud you are of this woman.
Well, I mean, she's my everything, and in some ways, this is not me crying, by the way, it's a weird thing in my throat. So one second. Excuse me. She and my sister are almost like a split soul.
Yeah.
It's like the two halves of a whole. They both raised me. My sister was given this. My sister's name is Tracy. I wrote the song Casey about my sister, just because Casey scanned better. But it's all. I'm so sorry. It's all about the fact that Tracy was sort of the baseball bat that could defeat the monster with a physical punch.
Mm-hmm.
But my mother was the sensitive touch, the person in charge of magic, making sure that if I were made of porcelain, that I was packed so delicately and that nothing would ever even put a crack or a hairline fracture in me. She's the sort of person who, she's 79 now, and she has a lot of health problems. And what I love about her view of life, look, I don't want to die, none of us really want to die. That's how I know I'm not truly suicidal, is because I really don't want to die. But my mother doesn't want to die because she says she'll miss everybody. And I think that says a lot about her as a person, because she just loves life. I've repeated this before, but look, I'm not a morning person. I fucking hate getting out of bed. So does my sister. My sister gets out of bed, one eye open, her hair just like fragile, just like. She looks like, I don't know if you've seen that meme of the one chihuahua that just. She'll forgive me because I look the same. My mother wakes up just like so excited about life. After everything that she's been through, she lost her sister, she lost her mother. She never had romantic love, which just kills me. She sacrificed romantic love so that she could raise 3 children. She'll never have romantic love. She's the most lovable person I've ever met in my life, but she sacrificed that. And there were so many men that I saw come into her life who would have loved her, and yet, because of the fear and because of the abuse, she would never have cheated on my father. But she is the kind of person who, for example, when I was way too old to believe in Santa Claus, spent an entire year buying Star Wars figures when she really couldn't afford to. And that Christmas Day, she let fucking fat Santa Claus take credit for it. I would be the kind of parent that was like, that was for me. school books and the bag and the underpants and the socks and stuff, but the Star Wars toys, that's for me. But she was so invested in the idea that I would believe in Santa Claus, spoiler alert, for as long as I possibly could. You know, that she didn't need the credit of making those huge sacrifices. To this day, like when people say, what's your mother's favourite song? She doesn't give a shit. She doesn't care, she just cares that I'm happy and that I do what makes my soul sing. She lives for her children and her grandchildren, and for her Chihuahua Billy. I'll just finish with one anecdote, which is amazing. Once this is in the book, but I took her to, she's been all around the world, but she never thought she would be. You know, she was a railway kid, in that my beautiful grandfather Poppy, he used to service railway tracks in Hornsby. They often lived in tents, and they never really realised that they were poor, but they were extremely poor. She, through this incredible life that you've given me, was able to see the world. You know, I got to take her to Paris. I got to put her on cruises. I got to. So I just say this because she's not very well at the moment. We don't know how much longer we'll have her, but she travelled. She's a little girl from Werris Creek who, as I said, was beaten up on her wedding night, and she would have stuck with that as her lot in life. And all of a sudden we're in Malibu, and we're at this restaurant that she didn't give a shit about called Nobu. She would have been happy with just all-you-can-eat Chinese. And we both went to the restroom at the same time, and she held my hands and she said, I want to apologise to you for your childhood. And she does this on a regular basis. And I stopped her and I just said, stop. Oh my God, you are a victim. You were his first victim. But look at you. You survived. And in that moment, the voice that came out of her was like a 15-year-old. And she said, we did survive. And it killed me, like her optimism and her youth and her innocence. I said, we did, didn't we? And she almost was skipping. We're in the middle of this super fancy, pretentious fucking restaurant. But she was just like, we did, didn't we? And I said, of course we did, Mum. And she's just so happy. And that's what I'm grateful for. And this book has her blessing, because all I really want people to get from this is, no matter what cards you're dealt in life, I think if you have love, and I think if you have any, even just one cell of resilience. I've witnessed a woman who was so beaten down, who manages to get out of bed every single day, and is so grateful to be alive. And she taught me how to love and how to receive love, and this immortalizes her. And
Definitely.
Yeah, I'm so grateful to her.
Yeah, resilience is the correct word. it's the right word, and I just want you to know before we get out of here, and I'm sure you've heard this since it's been released, but I think about the gorgeous blonde little boy who we see in the photos, and I think about what he must think of the man that you've become today. And I just think you'd be so proud of how strong and resilient you are, Darren.
Thank you.
You know? Too often we give flowers to people once they're gone or once it's too late, but if anything, this book has reminded us that we do need to live in the now with the people around us, blood family, chosen family, whoever, and to make it through all these things, we need to take time for ourselves to be like, yes, we did it.
We did it. I do want to say that the Year 9 school speech was fantastic. The reason it was said was because it took us 3.5 hours to sign books the other night. I know no one wants to do that, but I do want to say to you, I know what it's like to be a fan. I am a fan. And it's, if you ever dare to think that this journey has just been about a one-way exchange of energy, and then I've just been this ego vampire sucking it up. You are wrong. You have sustained me, and you've made me feel so grateful and loved and seen. And that's what I love about being able to do this. And thank you so much for giving me a voice tonight. But thank you for remembering me and for sticking with me, because I wouldn't be here. And I don't just mean I wouldn't have a career. I mean, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. So thank you so much.
Please give it up.
Sosefina